Arbitration, the way it's set up right now, is basically ridiculous.
I think if any owners thought that 2 divisions would make sense, but 2 wild cards, they'd be out of their minds.
If you believe the owners, they are saying, we haven't managed the game very well. It isn't organized very well. We need to change that, but we can't agree unless the players foot the bill. And the players say, what have we got to do with this?
Mr. Fear is a union leader. He is not co-commissioner of baseball.
Major League Baseball has been considered the American sport for the past 100 years. From Woodrow Wilson during the First World War to Harry Truman in the Cold War 50s to Johnson and Nixon in the tumultuous 60s and 70s, baseball has been the one constant throughout the past 75 years in American history. However, this appears to be changing. The motto of motherhood, apple pie, and baseball no longer seems to apply. Baseball no longer stands alone atop the sports world. Major League Baseball has seen its popularity decline among the youth that once played it almost exclusively. Have the fans really begun to lose interest in America's favorite pastime? Has free agency caused a rift between the millionaire players and the common fan? The owners have complained that they are becoming financially unstable and need revenue sharing along with a salary cap to remain solvent. The players wonder what the owners are talking about when revenues have gone up from $185 million in 1976 to $2 billion in 1993. The lack of a commissioner for the past 2 years has given baseball a black eye. Why was Fay Vincent, the previous commissioner, fired? Was it because he wouldn't let the owners control him? Why hasn't someone been hired to replace him? Major League Baseball increases from 4 to 6 divisions starting in 1994. Is this being done for love of money by the owners or truly in the best interests of the game, as the owners claim? Traditionalists certainly would not agree. Let us address these and other questions to representatives of the fans, players, and owners.
I think free agency is part of the problem with Major League Baseball, but there's no getting around it.
There's no question that's true. The answer is not to eliminate free agency. You can't turn the clock back. I wouldn't want to. I think a player's entitled to bargain for his worth in the marketplace in the same way that anybody else is in this kind of economic system that we have.
I think you have to look at it as anybody who wants to go out and get a job for themselves should be able to go out and get a job for as much money as they are able to do so. If you're a real old fogey, a real purist, you don't want your players to be jumping from team to team.
Free agency is a problem and a solution for Major League Baseball. It's a problem that it makes it hard to identify with the players as your players, and there are guys out there trying to win a championship for our team. It's not like it was in the 50s when, you got a guy on your team and you followed his entire career, and then maybe for the last 2 or 3 years of his life, he wandered around and tried to pick up where he could. But for the most part, he was a Brooklyn Dodger, or he was a New York Giant or a New York Yankee.
I don't think that's necessarily true. Yes, they are moving, but I think through the sheer trade process that had taken place in the past, players always move from one team to another. You might not see as many players staying with the same team these days as you had in the past, but there still are. You have the George Bretts and the Don Mattingleys who are still with that team forever, almost their whole career.
For loyalty factor, no, you can't have that and then have fans get behind a certain player for 5, 6 years if he's going to pick up and leave.
Well, I don't think that free agency necessarily means that players are moving and that fans are therefore disenchanted with their home team because they're not holding on to those star players. They are, in a lot of cases, holding on to them. But then again, I think that the mere loyalty to the team itself overrides the individual players on that team. It always will.
Once upon a time, you could enjoy the same players for an entire career. I don't think that's the answer by any means. I absolutely believe in the freedom of movement. But the flip side of freedom of movement is, who are these guys? They come and they go, and fan loyalty is eroded. You may have loved this team 2 years ago, but now there is no one left from that team. Pretty tough to identify with 25 new guys.
I don't know if there is that much player movement with with players signing for higher contracts than there was through trading. Trading is done at the behest of the owners, and free agency is done at the behest of the players. If they want to go out and change teams, it's their prerogative. Well, I don't think free agency has to be changed that much. I think if you're looking for a change in the player compensation areas, you look at arbitration.
Arbitration, the way it's set up right now, is basically ridiculous. You've got a guy, an arbitrator, who might not even follow baseball, doesn't know the first thing about the sport. What he'll do is look at statistics and go off pure stats, not nuances of the game like most baseball fans will do.
What happens in the real world is, if pitcher X signs for $5 million a year, then the pitcher that is up first for arbitration, if he has, for example, the same term of service, they will, in the arbitration proceeding, that pitcher will say, well, look, so-and-so signed for $5 million. My statistics are the same or close to it, and therefore I should get 4.5.
When you look at a player, not only do you look at numbers, you look at what he brings to the team in the clubhouse, leadership skills, his grit, determination. An arbitrator doesn't do that. He goes strictly by statistics. That is a huge problem in my mind, because you have non-baseball fans making decisions that affect the fans.
Because of the way certain guidelines are established and the way some players have made money, then the arbitrator has no choice but to say, yes, his stats compare favorably with Schwartz, who's making X, and he should get that too. This drives owners crazy.
The net effect of arbitration for the second 3 years of a player's service was to raise the rate at which player compensation increased very, very significantly.
The popular conception, and it is a misconception, is that they're getting burned. In fact, that's nonsense. The only reason we have salary arbitration is because the owners were unwilling to make players free agents at an earlier stage in their career, say 2 years.
I would understand they're saying that. I would say that is not true, because what happens is that the agents always get together and make sure that the first few free agency signings that take place of the most talented free agents set the bogey for the arbitration.
I think that arbitration has probably overinflated younger players' salaries early in the game. If after, let's say, a couple of years you've had tremendous seasons, automatically you can go into arbitration. And the players never lose in terms of finances. Player goes in wanting, let's say, $1 million. All the owners can offer is $750,000. The player that year had earned $200,000. The player's going to benefit one way or the other. To me, it was a vehicle by the owners that basically backfired, and they're ruining the day that they ever, accepted arbitration.
Arbitration has made it so that small market or large market, a shortstop who is worth $2 million is going to set the pay scale for all other shortstops with similar experience and similar statistics. Now, Milwaukee cannot obviously spend what the New York Yankees do. It creates an unfair pay scale.
I know of no study that has ever been done which has reached any conclusion except one, and this is the consensus conclusion. Salary arbitration eligible players are always paid less than they would receive in the free market. So the owners lose money in salary arbitration only if the comparison is that they would like to totally control player salaries. If the comparison is the free market, they make a lot of money in arbitration, and that's why they have never fought too hard about it.
I guess it has helped player salaries because the owners aren't anxious to go to arbitration. And so they'll sign a guy for perhaps more than they originally intended to, but at least it's They nail them up for a certain period of time, and it solves them the Excedrin headache number 323, which is arbitration.
The owners say the solution to baseball's financial woes is a salary cap. The players disagree.
The salary cap issue is the most complex and divisive issue in the industry. And it is only not commonly understood. It is so far from being commonly understood that I think that people might as well be talking Greek.
I think it could work in Major League Baseball. I think a big problem people have with the sport right now is that 240 hitters are making over $1 million a year. And for fans to understand that and accept that, it's very difficult.
First of all, the owners clearly have a financial incentive in a salary cap. The purpose of a cap is to get the union to agree that the players will be paid less than they would be paid if you didn't have a cap. That's the whole point. It must be less than market value for the players, otherwise the owners have no interest in it.
That may not be true. I think the players are assuming that a cap has an adverse effect on their salaries, and that may not necessarily be the case.
Imagine a cap at above players' market value. And if it was exactly the same as market value, why would anybody be fighting about it?
You're going to see a lot of players out there who are going to become free agents and are not going to get the salary levels that they might ordinarily achieve, because clubs are just paring down on their own to try to cut down their salary costs.
I think that's an owner-invented idea that just doesn't work, because I think it takes out the competitiveness of sports, and I think it just puts basically it just puts an artificial cap on things. It takes away a team's availability in terms of resources, what they can do in terms of strategies.
If everyone had a cap, it more or less puts the whole game on an equal playing field. And therefore players will then, I think, benefit by sharing a cap. By definition means that players are sharing in the revenues that the owners get. And by sharing in the revenues the owners get, I think puts everybody in an equal playing field. And I think the players will find that in the long run would be a better solution to them.
If you believe the owners, they are saying, we haven't managed the game very well. It isn't organized very well. We need to change that, but we can't agree unless the players foot the bill. And the players say, what have we got to do with this?
I think that it's a rhetorical argument that union leaders make all the time. You heard it in the coal industry, you heard it in the automobile industry. If only management had been intelligent, American automobiles would not have lost their competitive position. They did, so it's really the owner's fault that there's such job losses. The fact of the matter is that we have an economic system, for good or for bad, which says that the guy with the capital who owns a baseball team makes those decisions. Mr. Fear is a union leader. He is not co-commissioner of baseball.
Revenue sharing is an issue that not only divides players and owners, but also the owners themselves.
The owners then say, but a salary cap is inextricably intertwined with more revenue sharing. We have to have more revenue sharing, and that means we have to have a salary cap. Well, why is it? What's the connection between the two? There is one, but it doesn't have anything to do with the relative merits of either a salary cap or of revenue sharing.
I think revenue sharing can help the current state of baseball. In the long run, though, it might actually hurt. I can understand where the big city owners are coming from when they talk about, hey, this is my situation. I'm an owner here in New York, and I had enough money at the time to buy a team here in New York, and I should reap the benefits of having a team in a big city. Why should I share my money with the guy that bought a team in Seattle?
The owners go off in a room, and they negotiate with one another. And it's amazing, but they all agree that if the players make less money, then they'll be better off, and we can take that incremental difference the players make less, and we can give it to the small market clubs. In other words, the reason a salary cap is inextricably intertwined with revenue sharing is that the large market clubs will share with the small ones only if the players reimburse them through a salary cap.
I do think it's unfair for smaller market clubs to think that they should be subsidized by larger market clubs to the point, particularly to the point where they may just take a laid-back attitude and think that they're going to be getting this paycheck every month coming in, and therefore will not have the motive to generate the revenue.
You have to remember that you don't just go out and start the baseball business. The owners have to choose you to come into the baseball business, either to start an expansion franchise or to buy a team. They tell you what the price is, and they require you, when, as a condition of entering the league, to sign all of the existing revenue sharing agreements. And so you therefore learn how much of your gate receipt you have to share, what your TV market is, what share, if any, you get out of the national TV. For example, expansion teams got nothing out of the national TV this year.
Revenue sharing is a particular pet peeve with me, simply because here you have owners of teams such as Milwaukee or Minnesota, and they say, listen, we want to compete with the big boys in New York and LA. We want a major league team. Okay? Then they get a team. Then all of a sudden they realize that they can't compete because maybe they don't have the same influx of money that you would get, let's say, in New York from a cable. Then they start crying that they can't compete. And I say to myself, well, then if you want to play with the big boys, then you have to have the revenue, you have to have the plans, the strategy to compete with the big boys. Isn't that what capitalism, competition is all about?
My thought on this has always been to own a sports team, professional sports team, should be a luxury. It should not be a case where a guy is making all his money off this team, because it affects so many people, not only players, of course, front office people, secretaries, scouts, and the fans.
These players are making big bucks before these owners turned up. Why do they keep turning up? Whenever a ball club goes up for sale, there are more than one set of owners looking to buy it. And the Baltimore club, and we're not talking a hot market here, nice ballpark, nice stadium, but not a hot market. They went for $180 million or so. I mean, I lock out after $150 million, so I can't give you the exact, but it was about $180 million. It's pretty tough to cry poverty when that situation exists. We all know ball players are making a lot of money. A ball club comes up for sale, and there's a line halfway around the block. It must still be a pretty good business to be in.
The myth of the office of the commissioner was built up over 70 years since Landis. It came to be looked upon not only by sports media but by the public as the repository of information, and the office charged with safeguarding the game, whatever that means. And more importantly, the public relations focal point of the industry. And they threw it away. The owners threw it away, not because they fired Fay Vincent, but because of the way they did it.
No. I mean, that's all media hype. The press doesn't like the owners, and they will always find some reason to do it. History will have to judge the wisdom of that. Fay Vincent was and is a very, very decent human being. I think the reason they decided to make a change was that the economic problems in baseball weren't being addressed.
The myth of the commissioner's office has been lost, and I think it'll take a very long time to get it back. And I think that that myth had some value that the game is going to lose.
I think to a degree the inmates are running the asylum. You've heard the cliche before, but I think it might fit right now with Major League Baseball. In terms of what a player feels as if he can get away with, I don't think it's ever been like this, where there's a freedom for these players almost.
I don't see any difference right now in what's going on in baseball between what they're doing and what they would do if they had a commissioner.
Let's take a look at the owners. I mean, the owners are the people that are running this show right now, and there's got to be checks and balances in all of society. In government, obviously, we have it, and that was something that was established early on, and you need it at Major League Baseball. You really do need some checks and balances.
I feel that the commissioner has always been a figurehead and just a wooden idol for the owners to go to in terms of spats. You have to remember that the owners are the ones who vote on a commissioner. It's the owners who remove or replace a commissioner. Commissioner is just a figurehead.
The fact that I don't think people realize when you don't have a commissioner in office, and especially when you don't have a strong commissioner, it isn't just having a commissioner. You have to have a guy who wants to do the job and can do the job, and I'm not sure that anybody can anymore.
I personally think what baseball needs is a commissioner who has the respect of the owners. I think there's no reason to give the commissioner sort of extra celestial power, because in the final analysis, he's got to have the power to protect the public interest on matters of integrity. That clearly, nobody dissents from that proposition, but that wasn't an issue in the Fay Vincent dispute.
Oh, I don't think the commissioner's office had any stature. I mean, the owners made the decisions and the commissioner announced them. The commissioner was the announcement. Some guys announced them better than others. Fay Vincent was a good announcer. And he had some good ideas. You can tell they were good ideas because the owners rejected them all.
I guess they did have to realign for economic purposes. They needed another tier of playoffs, to generate some more revenue. Am I happy with the way that they went about it? Certainly 3 divisions and 1 wild card is a lot better than 2 divisions and the top 2 teams from each division getting in, which would completely have eliminated the great pennant race we just saw with the Giants and the Braves, which would have been absolutely meaningless to see which team, got the first seed and which team got the second seed. I mean, that's not what baseball pennant races are about.
The real reason behind 3-division play is to give the regular season more of an important look and be more meaningful, so that more clubs are in contention for either the division leader or the wild card. For the length of the baseball season, that's important to have more clubs contending.
I think the Players Association had the right idea with this, and I think the owners really didn't think it out.
I think there was a sense, and the owners were very divided on this, and we did a lot of polling to find out what the public's attitude was. Public seemed to prefer it as well. They thought it'd be simpler.
There was zero interest that I could detect on the players' part in having an additional round of playoffs with 2 divisions, where you'd just be playing for second place.
I don't know if all the owners wanted, we're not in favor of 3 divisions, but it just makes more sense. You have the same amount of teams that are going to be in the playoffs, yet you do it in a way so that teams aren't tanking to finish second.
When you've got 3 divisions, at least you can say, well, I'm the central champ, and you're not dealing in total wild card city.
It is not true that the owners only wanted a 2-division setup and it was the players who wanted a 3-division setup. I think the owners had asked for a 2-division and decided on a 2-division arrangement temporarily, while they looked at the possibility of having 3-division alignment.
I think if any owners thought that 2 divisions would make sense, but 2 wild cards, they'd be out of their minds.
And so if you're going to do it, which the players, I think, were persuaded one ought to seriously consider if it could be demonstrated that the fans had interest, and we think it has been, is you had to find a way to do that in a fashion which maintains as best you can the integrity of the pennant races. That means 3 divisions now, and perhaps way down the road if you've got enough teams into 4 divisions.
While there appears to be agreement on the 3-division alignment, there is dissension over the way the new playoff system will be broadcast on television.
Colossal dumbness. The minute I heard it, and for all the weeks and months since they devised this plan, I thought that is just another reason why they need a commissioner with some sense, because now all the postseason playoff games are going to be shown regionally, so that those people who in the past would have watched both sets of league championship series now will not see both of them because they will be played at the same time, and a city that is designated a National League city will only be able to watch the National League Championship Series.
Now, the fact that they regionalized the playoffs, baseball has always been a regional and local interest. It has not had much of a national interest, particularly when you've had teams like the recent playoffs, Philadelphia versus Atlanta, or Toronto versus Chicago.
You're going to see the team closest to you play all or most of its games. Still more than we had before.
Anybody who watched the Atlanta-Pittsburgh series the last couple of years would know they don't want to miss that, nor do they want to miss the ALCS. There have been some great series the last few years, and now people are going to miss it.
People in San Diego really didn't care much about watching Toronto play Chicago. But But if you regionalize that so that you have more people in the local or regional area watching their teams that are closer to them, I think you'll have more interest in the playoffs, and I think that's better for the fans.
Highlights will not be enough. Cut-ins will not be enough. They will realize when the groundswell of people are saying, we want this, they'll have to change it or offer pay-per-view.
The very nature of baseball is that even in the playoffs, it's played virtually every day. And when you had 2 consecutive playoffs going on, you could deal with it. Day, night, off day, game, whatever. There was a way to do it. Now we're talking about 4 sets of games in that first round. That's too tough to handle. I don't think giving fans triple headers on TV days is the answer.
Pay-per-view.
I hope it doesn't cost too much, and I certainly don't think it should be about your local team. But if there's a very hot pitching matchup, and if 2 terrific pitchers are going at it, and you want to watch that game, here's my $5. I really want to see that game. $10, I'm not so sure.
I think Congress especially keeps a close eye on baseball and their antitrust exemption, and pay-per-view is seen as the sin of all sins.
I think that to the extent pay-per-view games would substitute for games already broadcast over the air or on basic cable, you get a fair amount of political resistance to it and perhaps some consumer resistance. My guess is that pay-per-view will come in not there. It will come in as a service designed to bring games not available in the area you're in for a special fee. So it's not something you could have otherwise seen. So if you're a Yankee fan and you happen to be in Los Angeles, you can get the Yankee games for an extra fee when otherwise you wouldn't be able to get them at all.
I can't predict. That's not my expertise. Certainly baseball has promised the Congress that they will not go for pay-per-view over the next few years, and they will honor that promise.
Increase in wild cards?
I am the wrong guy to ask about extra playoffs. Where, God, does it end, you know? And the answer is it doesn't. Now we're going to make it, it's going to be the hockeyization of baseball if we keep it up. And it's not an original thought. A lot of people feel that way. And count me with them.
It's like eating a bag of potato chips. Once you start, you can't stop. I'd say within 10 years, you'll see at least 2 wild cards.
With baseball, it's a long season. You can do that in hockey and basketball and get away with it because you're talking about an 80-game season. Baseball's 162 games. So if you make those games during the season less meaningful, I think it's going to be harmful to the game itself.
Interleague play.
I think interleague play will be around, though, because I think greedy owners have a mistaken notion that everybody's going to flock to see a Mets-Yankees game, which they may, but I don't know how many people are going to flock to see a Mets-White Sox game or a Mets-Twins game, and if all the Mets are going to do is play the Yankees, I don't know how they're going to work that out in the schedule.
I think if they went to interleague play, and again, I stress that more than likely they will, simply because it's money, I think that they're just ruining a nice tradition of baseball.
Interleague play, I think, should be on their agenda currently, and I think it will be, and I see that in the near future. I think that's very possible in the near future.
And if they ever go to aluminum bats, I'm out of here.